Every single day, over 2 billion people reheat a drink without a second thought. They assume that if it's hot enough, it's safe enough. Here's a number I want you to remember. 1 hour. That's how long it takes for bacteria in a milk-based drink to start multiplying fast enough to matter. And for someone over 60, that matters more than you'd think. According to guidance from the CDC and the NHS, older adults face a higher risk of foodborne illness than younger adults do because the immune system responds more slowly with age. Yet almost nobody is talking about what actually happens inside your mug. When you reheat it, not once but 2 or 3 times a day, the changes are completely silent. You cannot see them, you cannot smell them, but they are happening in the acidity of your coffee, in the sugar of your honey water, in the bacteria of your warm milk, long before any of it reaches your lips. By the end of this video, you'll know precisely which of your daily drinks are completely fine to reheat, which ones are quietly working against your health, and the one mistake almost everyone over 60 is making, without ever realizing it. Let's uncover it together. Before we talk about the drinks themselves, let's talk about why this topic matters more for older adults than it does for a 20-year-old grabbing a to-go cup on the way to work. Our bodies change as we age, and a few of those changes are especially relevant here. First, our immune system responds a little more slowly than it used to. According to general guidance from health organizations like the CDC and the NHS, older adults are more vulnerable to foodborne illness. That means if bacteria happen to grow in a drink that's been sitting out too long, the body may have a harder time fighting it off compared to when we were younger. This isn't meant to alarm you, it's simply biology. Our defenses work a little slower, so prevention becomes more important than it used to be. Second, digestion often slows down with age. This doesn't make a cup of reheated coffee dangerous, but it does mean that things like acidity, or drinks that have sat at room temperature for hours, can cause more stomach discomfort in someone in their 60s, 70s, or 80s than they might have caused that same person 30 years earlier. Many people notice this themselves. A cup of coffee that never used to bother them suddenly leaves them feeling uncomfortable. An hour later. Third, and this is a big one, many older adults are managing other health conditions at the same time. High blood pressure type 2 diabetes, kidney concerns, acid reflux, heart conditions. Some of the drinks we're about to talk about interact with these conditions in ways that are absolutely worth understanding. Even though cancer isn't the accurate word for what's happening, there's also a fourth factor that doesn't get talked about enough: routine. Many of us develop small daily habits over decades: the same mug, the same pot of tea, the same afternoon coffee ritual. These habits feel comforting. They feel safe. And that's exactly why it's worth taking a closer look at them every once in a while. Not because they're dangerous, but because a few small adjustments can make them even better for your health. So, this video isn't about scaring you away from your afternoon tea, or telling you to give up your morning coffee ritual. It's about understanding what's actually happening in that reheated mug, so you can make small, smart, informed adjustments that protect your health for years to come. Sound good? Let's go through it, one drink at a time, starting with the one almost everyone asks about first. Let's start with tea, because it's the drink people ask about most. And it's also one of the most common drinks in households across the world, especially among older adults who've had a cup of tea every single day of their adult lives. Here's the truth: reheating tea does not cause cancer. That specific claim simply isn't backed by any major health authority, not the CDC, not the NHS, not the Mayo Clinic, not the National Institute on Aging. If you've seen a video claiming otherwise, it's worth being skeptical of that source going forward. But here's what is true, and it's worth paying attention to. When tea sits out for a long time, especially at room temperature, and especially in a warm kitchen, it can develop bacterial growth just like any beverage left sitting too long. This is especially true if you've added milk to your tea, because milk is far more hospitable to bacteria than plain tea leaves and water. For someone with a more sensitive stomach, or a slightly weaker immune response due to age or an existing health condition, this can lead to mild stomach upset, bloating, or discomfort. To be clear, this isn't cancer and it isn't usually serious, but it's uncomfortable and it's completely avoidable. There's also a change in taste and a loss of beneficial plant compounds called antioxidants. Tea, especially green tea, contains natural antioxidants that many people drink tea specifically to get the benefit of. Reheating tea, especially in a microwave, can degrade some of these compounds over time, so that second reheated cup isn't giving you the same benefit as your first fresh cup. It's mostly just warm-colored water with a fraction of the original goodness. There's one more thing worth mentioning: repeated reheating. Especially boiling tea over and over on the stove can concentrate the tannins in tea. This is what makes reheated tea taste noticeably more bitter and astringent. Some people find this harder on their stomach, especially on an empty stomach in the morning. So, what should you do instead? If you're making tea, try to only make what you'll realistically drink within the next couple of hours. A smaller pot, more often, is a simple habit shift that solves most of this problem entirely. If you do have leftover tea, don't leave it sitting on the counter for hours. Pop it in the fridge instead. Cold tea is easy to gently reheat later, and it's much safer than tea that's been sitting out at room temperature all afternoon. When you do reheat tea, do it gently, on the stove over low heat, or in short microwave bursts of 20 to 30 seconds at a time, stirring in between. Avoid letting it come to a rolling boil repeatedly, since that's what breaks down the beneficial compounds fastest. And one more thing, simple but often overlooked: if your tea has milk in it, treat leftover milk tea with extra caution. It behaves much more like a dairy product at that point, and we'll talk more about why that matters in just a few minutes. Simple, right? Small habits, but they add up to a real difference over months and years. Coffee is next, and honestly, this is the one that surprises people the most once they hear the real explanation. Reheated coffee will not give you cancer. Full stop. But it will taste noticeably worse, because the natural oils in coffee break down and oxidize with repeated heating. That's why reheated coffee often tastes flat, bitter, or slightly burnt, even if it was delicious an hour earlier. The bigger issue for older adults isn't cancer at all, it's acidity. Coffee that's been reheated multiple times becomes more acidic in character and can be harder on the stomach lining. If you already deal with acid reflux, which becomes noticeably more common as we age due to changes in the digestive system, this can make symptoms worse. Many people notice more heartburn or that uncomfortable burning feeling after drinking coffee that's been reheated 2 or 3 times throughout the day, rather than a single fresh cup. There's also a caffeine consideration that's easy to overlook. If you're sipping on reheated coffee throughout the day, a little in the morning, a little more in the early afternoon, another warm-up around 3 or 4, you may be consuming more caffeine later in the day than you realize. And caffeine timing matters enormously for sleep quality. This matters more as we age because sleep quality plays a huge role in memory, mood, heart health, and even balance and fall risk. Poor sleep has been linked by organizations like the National Institute on Aging to a wide range of health concerns in older adults, from cognitive fog to increased blood pressure. So that innocent-looking cup of reheated coffee at 4 in the afternoon might genuinely be part of why sleep feels harder to come by lately. There's one more thing worth mentioning here. Reheating coffee in the microwave versus on the stove can actually make a noticeable difference in how evenly it heats. Microwaves can create hot spots, meaning your coffee might scald your tongue in one sip and be lukewarm in the next. This isn't dangerous, but it's uncomfortable, and it's easily avoided by simply stirring thoroughly after reheating. So, what should you do instead? Try making smaller batches of coffee, so you're naturally less tempted to reheat leftovers throughout the day. A single cup, brewed fresh, is often just as quick as reheating. If you do need to reheat coffee, try to do it only once, not multiple times across the day. Reheating repeatedly is where the acidity and bitterness really start to build up. Try to finish caffeinated coffee earlier in the day. Many sleep experts suggest avoiding caffeine after early afternoon, particularly for older adults, since caffeine can stay in the system longer than people expect. And if reflux is a concern for you, consider whether a lower acid coffee or even switching your last cup of the day to decaf might make a noticeable difference in how your stomach feels come evening. Think of this less as a cancer risk and more as a sleep and stomach comfort issue. That reframing matters a lot because it turns a scary myth into a practical, useful habit you can actually control. This next one is one of the most talked about claims online, that heating honey creates a toxic or even cancer-causing substance. You've probably seen this claim shared many times, often alongside a warning never to add honey to hot water. Let's be clear right away. Mainstream health organizations do not support the claim that reheating honey causes cancer. This particular myth tends to circulate widely on social media, but it doesn't hold up against established food science or medical guidance. However, there is something worth knowing, and it's more nuanced than a simple yes or no. When honey is heated to very high temperatures, think boiling, not just warm, it can lose some of its natural enzymes and beneficial nutrients. Honey in its raw form contains small amounts of enzymes and antioxidants that are somewhat heat sensitive. High heat can reduce these slightly. It may also develop a different taste, sometimes described as more bitter, or with a caramelized edge once it's been heated repeatedly. None of this makes honey dangerous. It simply means that boiling honey repeatedly isn't doing you any favors nutritionally, and it changes the flavor in a way many people don't love. Here's the more important point, and it's one that often gets lost in all the talk about temperature. For older adults managing blood sugar, honey itself deserves more attention than the heating process does. Honey is still a form of sugar. Whether it's warm or cold, freshly stirred or reheated 3 times, it affects blood glucose the same way once it's in your body. If you're managing type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, or simply trying to keep your blood sugar steady as part of healthy aging, the real question isn't was this honey reheated? It's how much honey am I having, and how often? So the real takeaway isn't about temperature at all. It's about portion and frequency. One gentle reminder worth including here. Honey should never be given to infants under 1 year old, due to a small risk of infant botulism, but that's a completely separate issue from anything we're discussing today and doesn't apply to adults. So, what should you do instead? If you enjoy warm honey water in the morning or evening, that's completely fine to continue. Just avoid boiling it repeatedly, or letting it sit on a hot stove for extended periods. Add your honey to water that's warm, not boiling. This helps preserve more of honey's natural qualities and keeps the flavor pleasant, rather than caramelized or bitter. If you're watching your blood sugar, think of honey as a treat you're enjoying mindfully, not as a health drink you can have freely just because it's natural. A teaspoon here and there is very different from a heaping tablespoon multiple times a day. And if you're unsure how honey fits into your specific health picture, especially if you have diabetes or prediabetes, this is a great, simple question to bring to your doctor or a dietitian at your next visit. See, nothing scary here at all, just a little more awareness about where the real concern actually lies. Last one, milk-based drinks. This includes warm milk before bed, milk tea, milky coffee, or even warm cocoa. Here's the real concern with this one, and it genuinely has nothing to do with cancer. Bacterial growth. Milk is a much more sensitive product than tea or coffee on their own. If milk-based drinks sit out at room temperature for more than an hour or 2, bacteria can multiply quite quickly, especially in a warm kitchen, and especially during summer months. This isn't a rare, made-up, or exaggerated risk. It's basic, well-established food safety guidance that applies to milk and dairy products generally, not something unique to reheating. For older adults, whose immune systems may respond more slowly to unwanted bacteria, this is genuinely something worth being careful about. It's one of the very few points in this whole video where I'd say, please pay real attention here, not because it's a hidden cancer risk, but because foodborne illness in older adults can sometimes be more serious and take longer to recover from than it would in a younger person. The reheating process itself isn't the dangerous part, as long as it's done properly. The real danger is in how long the drink sat out beforehand, and whether it gets reheated evenly and thoroughly all the way through, rather than just being warmed slightly in the microwave. This matters especially for warm milk before bed, which is a beloved bedtime ritual for so many people, particularly those who've enjoyed it for decades as a way to relax before sleep. If you made a mug of warm milk last night, didn't finish it, left it on the nightstand overnight, and are considering reheating it tonight, please don't. That's exactly the kind of situation where bacteria have had plenty of time and the right conditions to grow. The same goes for milk tea or milky coffee left out over a long afternoon. It might look and smell fine, but appearance alone isn't a reliable way to judge whether a dairy-based drink is still safe. So, what should you do instead? Don't leave milk-based drinks sitting out for more than an hour or two, especially in warm weather or a heated kitchen. Refrigerate any leftover milk-based drink promptly, within that same hour or to window. Not whenever you get around to it. When you do reheat it, make sure it's heated evenly and thoroughly all the way through. Not just lukewarm in the middle while hot around the edges. Stirring while reheating helps distribute heat evenly. If it smells even slightly off, looks different than usual, or tastes strange in any way, don't drink it. Trust your senses here. They're a genuinely reliable warning system, and it's simply not worth the risk to just see if it's fine. And as a general rule of thumb, if a milk-based drink has been sitting out for more than a few hours or overnight, it's safest to simply pour it out and make a fresh one rather than reheating it at all. This one is genuinely about food safety, not about cancer. But out of all food drinks we've covered today, this is the one where the caution is most warranted, especially for anyone with a weaker immune system or an existing health condition. Let's pause for a moment and recap everything we just covered, because there's a clear pattern here that's worth remembering. Tea. Reheating won't cause cancer, but bacterial growth if left out too long, and some nutrient loss from repeated heating are real, minor concerns worth managing. Coffee. Reheating won't cause cancer, but increased acidity and caffeine timing matter more as we age, especially for sleep and reflux. Honey water. The reheating itself isn't the real issue at all. Blood sugar, portion size, and frequency are what actually deserve your attention. Milk-based drinks. The real risk is bacterial growth from sitting out too long, not the act of reheating itself, and this is the one area where genuine caution is warranted. Notice the pattern? None of these are actually about cancer. They're about digestive comfort, blood sugar, sleep quality, and basic food safety. All things that matter more as we get older, and all things we can manage easily with a few small, sustainable habits. Now let's talk about some common mistakes people make around this topic, because avoiding these matters far more than any scary headline ever could. The first and probably most important mistake is believing every health claim you see online without checking where it actually comes from. A dramatic, scary title gets more clicks than a accurate one. That's simply how online content tends to work. Before you cut something out of your diet or panic about a daily habit you've had for decades, take a moment to check whether the claim is actually supported by a real health organization. The CDC, the National Institute on Aging, the Mayo Clinic, the NHS, or your own trusted doctor. If a video can't point you toward any of those sources, that's a meaningful red flag worth noticing. The second mistake is leaving drinks out for too long, especially milk-based ones. We covered this in detail already, but it's worth repeating here because it's genuinely the biggest actual risk in this entire video, not the reheating itself, but how long something sits at room temperature before you drink it. A simple habit of refrigerating leftovers promptly solves the vast majority of this concern. The third mistake is reheating the same drink multiple times throughout the day. Whether it's tea or coffee, reheating over and over degrades flavor, reduces beneficial compounds, and can increase acidity, which affects digestion. Try to reheat once, finish it, and start fresh next time rather than warming the same cup repeatedly across several hours. The fourth mistake is ignoring how caffeine and sugar affect sleep and blood pressure as we age. This isn't about any of these drinks being secretly toxic. It's about paying closer attention to timing and portion size, which matters more and more for people managing blood pressure, blood sugar, or ongoing sleep issues, all of which become more common with age. The fifth mistake is assuming natural, always means safe in any amount. Honey is a perfect example of this. It's natural, it's been used for generations, and it certainly has some genuine benefits, but it's still sugar at the end of the day. Getting older doesn't mean you need to eliminate honey completely. It simply means that portion size and timing deserve a bit more thoughtful attention than they might have a few decades ago. And the sixth mistake is trusting appearance over your other senses when it comes to dairy. A milk-based drink can look completely normal and still not be safe to drink if it's been sitting out too long. Smell and taste are much more reliable indicators, and when in doubt, it's always safer to simply pour it out and start fresh. So, here's what we learned together today. The viral claim that reheating tea, coffee, honey water, or milk causes cancer simply isn't supported by real health evidence from any major medical organization. But that doesn't mean these drinks are entirely risk-free if they're handled carelessly, especially for those of us over 60. The real concerns are things like bacterial growth from sitting out too long, particularly with milk-based drinks, increased acidity building up in reheated coffee, blood sugar impact from honey regardless of its temperature, and a gradual loss of beneficial nutrients from repeated reheating of tea. None of that is scary once you understand it. All of it is entirely manageable with just a few small, simple daily habits. So here's your one simple takeaway to carry with you. Make smaller batches so reheating isn't even necessary as often. Refrigerate leftovers promptly rather than leaving them on the counter. Reheat once and thoroughly rather than multiple times. And pay attention to how your own body feels afterward, because you know your body better than any headline ever could. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more honest, calm, no-fear health information made especially for adults over 60 and the people who care about them. And if you have specific questions about how any of these drinks fit into your own health picture, especially around diabetes, blood pressure, reflux, or digestive issues, please bring those questions to your own doctor. They know your full history, your medications, and your specific needs, and they can give you guidance that's genuinely tailored to you, not just general advice from a video. This video is for general educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult your doctor or healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, especially if you have existing health conditions. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I'll see you in the next video.